Hello everybody, I'm Sarah and I'm a recorder player. Today's video has been requested by a lot of you and I think it's a great one, all about how to memorise music and play by heart. I really like to play by heart, whether it's early music, contemporary music, music theatre, pop music, folk music. Often I'm on stage without a music stand. So how can we effectively memorise music and play by heart without having that fear of forgetting it on stage? My very first tip about memorising music is to build it into your practice. For me, I find it doesn't work to learn a piece until it's concert ready and then start memorising it. Then your brain is working in a completely different way. It can be very confusing. So I try and memorise the music as I'm practising. I actually practice from memory, and in that way it really gets internalised. A friend of mine told me that if you practice something wrong, you have to practice it 3 times as much correctly in order to cancel out the wrongness. And that must be true because she read it on Facebook. So be very careful when you're practicing from memory that you're practicing it correctly. First, we're going to look at all the different ways that I approach a piece of music with the help of my handy whiteboard. It's good to remember that by the time you are performing a piece, you effectively have it from memory. Sight reading is when you read something for the very, very first time, but when you're performing it, you've got it all internalised, and the music is actually just this kind of safety net. So we're looking at ways in which we can get rid of that safety net. But that's nice to think about. By the time you're on stage, you actually have the music memorised already, you just don't know it. There are all different ways in which you can memorise music, all different ways in which our brain works when you're playing, and we are going to look at all of these because I use everything in little bits when I'm memorising. The first thing is muscle memory. This is when your fingers know what to do without you having to think about it. You can trust a lot to muscle memory. Sometimes I find that I can play a piece through by heart without even thinking about it, and that's because my fingers have learned what to do. One way in which you can practice muscle memory is taking each bar one by one and playing it through very slowly and repeating it quite a few times. After doing it twice with the music, put the music away and see if you can still play it. Keep repeating it. We're getting that repetition into the fingers, but keep checking the music to make sure you're not practicing it incorrectly. In my other video, how to play fast, there's a link down below, I talk a lot about training the fingers with these repeated exercises, and those are really, really useful for training your muscle memory. However, just muscle memory is not enough. Even though your muscles know what they're doing, your brain can really get in the way, and it can say things like, do you really know this section? What if you forget this part? You're going to forget it. The second way is your oral memory, or your ears. When you're playing by heart, your muscle memory is going, but you're also playing by ear. You're listening back to yourself and reacting on that at the same time. And when you've been practicing a piece a lot, you know the piece by heart in your ears. In a similar way, do you ever have it where you put on the radio and there's a pop song that's from like 15 years ago and you start singing along and you know all the words and you're like, I haven't heard this for years and years. That's because you have learnt it orally, you've learnt it by ear, but we can also use that in instrumental music. So when your muscle memory is going and you're playing, keep listening to yourself and keep singing the tune along in your head. An excellent way to practice this, now we've already gotten rid of the safety net of the music, we're now going to get rid of the safety net of your ears, and you are going to try practicing your piece on a pen. I would just take one bar at a time and try it on your pen. This is very difficult as you can't hear what you're doing. Your inner ear is working overtime to try and imagine it, and your muscle memory is having to work as well. What kind of memory do we use when we're reading music? Visual. Now, your visual memory, as I said already, by the time you're performing a piece, you kind of know it by heart, and the score is just a memory aid. You're not reading it. you're just following it. It's like, oh yeah, there, oh yeah, there, oh yeah, there. It's a bit like the first time you drive a long distance to somewhere new, you're like, and when you've driven it a few times, you don't even have to think. Well, that's like reading music. Can this be helpful when we're playing by heart? Well, if you have a photographic memory, it can. Sometimes I imagine the score in my head and I don't exactly read along it in my head, but I can imagine the kind of flow of the notes. So unless you have really photographic memory, maybe it's not so useful for you, but I would also spend some time really looking at the score. This is me looking at a score. When you're using any type of memory, try and couple it onto the other memories to support that. So I'm going to train my visual memory a bit by looking at the score, but at the same time, I'm going to sing it through in my head and I'm going to move my fingers on the pen. So now we're engaging muscle, oral, and visual memory. These kind of memories are the ones that happen in the moment, but you can also really prepare with a more intellectual side, and that is the structural memory. As I like to call it, the structural memory is understanding the music. It's knowing what is happening and where. So we're talking about the form, how many bars, how many times it repeats, where you go back to, and then we're also talking about the harmony. What key do you start in? Where do we go? Do you modulate? Do you have something strange? Of course, it might be a through composed form, it might be a piece with atonal harmonies, but that's fine, we'll get to there in a bit. For example, early music, baroque music, jazz music, pop music, folk music, this is all built upon structure and harmony, and if you know this beforehand, then you have a whole kind of grid within to work. Then if you do forget it, you can be like, okay, well in 4 bars we modulate back to A major and then we're back in the beginning so I can do this again and then anyway this comes back again. And it's all going to be fine. Within this kind of intellectual memory, I'm going to write that down as well. Within this kind of structural intellectual memory, you can go as detailed as you like. For example, knowing that you have this number of notes, then you have this interval and this number of times. A lot of music is based on patterns. If you analyse your music, that means look at it and work out what's happening, you can often find a lot of patterns, and then it's good to really know how many times each pattern comes back and where, because then you can use those as a kind of another safety net. So maybe this is helpful for you. We have the muscle memory, the oral memory, the visual memory, the structural memory, and then an intellectual understanding of all of this. And by using all of these to support each other, you've created a really good framework for yourself to be able to play that music by heart. If it's really only you on stage, you don't have anyone else to rely on. That means there's no one to give you cues. This could be very freeing. It could mean that if you go wrong, you're free to find your way back. But it's also, you're a bit isolated. If I'm playing solo music, I really like to make a story for myself within the score. So to understand what is happening, like I begin here and it means this, then I go to there, then I grow to here. By coupling the music to a story for myself, that gives me a line to work along, and no one else has to know this story, it's just to help you with it. In chamber music, of course, you can make up your own story for the music as well, your own intentions to work along, but there are a lot of ways in which your fellow players can help you as well. Know what the other players are doing. This means that if you go wrong, you can identify some cues for yourself. There's probably going to be a couple of moments in the music where you're like, oh, that's the part where I always forget it. Arrange a cue for yourself. Find something noticeable that someone else is playing and hold on to that. Preferably let them know that you are doing that as well. Then they can also give you a cue, you know, like. So check out how your parts relate. Is it polyphony? Are you weaving around each other? Is there imitation? Does something happen here, then that person copies it, then that person copies it? Are you all playing chords together with the same rhythm? This is all really important to know. If you are going to perform by heart together, rehearse by heart. It doesn't have to be from the very first rehearsal, although if that's possible, great, but make sure you've rehearsed by heart a lot before performing. If you show up on stage without the music and one person gets it wrong, it can take the whole ensemble with it. Arrange with your ensemble some pick-up points. This is if you all get out and forget what you're doing, it's an arrangement that we all meet there. For example, if everything goes wrong, we look at each other and start again from B. We're now going to look at a couple of pieces that I perform by heart, and I'm going to tell you how I memorise them. The first is a piece of Bach. It's his trio in D minor, number 23, originally for organ, and I play this with my trio. I play the bass line, which gets very confusing because you get into these endless cycles of fifths that go round and around and around, at some point go out a different way each time. And if you take the wrong exit, then... So with Bach, the first thing to really do is understand the structure and the harmony. What key are you in where you begin? What key are you in when you end? Where do you go in between? When does that happen? What are the other people doing when that happens? If you get lost, you can be like, okay, we're going to B minor soon, so I'm with their rest. A tip is to record yourself or yourselves playing the piece. Just record it on your phone and then listen to it a lot. Then you're really learning it by ear. You can also play along to this. That's a very, very good thing to do. So either play along to a recording, or if you have it, to a MIDI file. A lot of MIDI files of early music can be found on the website IMSLP. Okay, so this piece of Bach has a lot of patterns. There's a section where I get the following. This section comes back a few times, and one time it ends with, and another time with. So for this, I really have to understand the harmony. What key am I going to? One time we have. To D minor, and the other time to. To B flat major. If I know that, I can find it on my recorder. I also like to know how many times the pattern comes. So dabba 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 da. Okay, I have 4 times a pattern of ba da 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 until I have to take the exit. I also know for the piece as a whole, we have the kind of A section. That happens twice after one another. Then we have a B section. That also happens twice after one another. And then we have a C section that happens once. If I know that, that makes everything so much simpler. When you're memorising the piece, you're practising it in small sections without the music, but when you have the whole piece memorised, it's good to keep going through it. However, this can take a lot of time, so I find it really helpful to play the piece very fast and short, but complete. For this, you don't have to be musical, it's about just checking it all through with your brain. And because you're playing it fast and short, you have the time and the concentration to do it more. Okay, we're going to have a look at a piece of contemporary music. This is by Roderik de Man, and it's a piece called Sin Descanso. And I played it in my master end exam, you can hear it here. It's a very fast and twiddly piece, so a lot of it is related to muscle memory. This is not sight readable, so by the time you can actually play it at speed, you have it memorised in your fingers, and it's just trusting to take it away from the music. I'm just going to look at a short passage, and what I liked to do is practice it without the music, but making sure I have all of the dynamics, articulation and rhythm, so you're practicing everything. we have a little section in that that's... if you have a pattern like that, I find it's really helpful to play it forwards and backwards. And we're also going to play it as a scale as da 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 da. So you're always going one step backwards. If you're having to work it out as you go along, that's really good because your brain is processing it and building all kind of new pathways, probably. My biggest tip when performing by heart is just to trust it. That voice in your head saying, oh my God, you're going to forget it. Oh my God, you're going to forget it. Well, if you do forget it, then you do. You can forget music by heart and live to tell the tale. In my bachelor exam in England, I was performing some divisions on madrigals with an organist, and halfway through I forgot what I was doing. I thought, oh my God, I have practiced for months and I have ruined my end exam. I'm going to fail. The whole time I was just playing and I improvised my way back into the piece. So if you use your ears and your knowledge of the structural harmony, then you can always improvise your way back into the piece. Give yourself time. This is why I really like to practice memorization as I'm practicing the piece, because then you don't have to plan an extra month to memorize it. It's already built in. Get some friends or family members and make sure you perform for them by heart at least 3 times. The first time is going to be like, oh my God, but I did it. The second time is going to be like, oh, that was fine. Oh my God, no, it's still hard. The third time is going to be like, okay, I've got this, it's fine. And then when you come on stage, also figure out where you're going to look while you're playing. I always like to pick a point kind of above the audience's heads. Don't stare people in the face, that's not nice. And just look out and play outwards. If you're looking all over the place, that can get people quite nervous. And if you're looking down at the ground, then your music isn't projecting out anyway, so what's the point of playing by heart? And then when you have all that and you've done your preparation, just trust it. Have fun and go forth. Oh, that's so much information. Thank you for watching this video on memorization all the way to the end. I'd really like to hear if this was useful for you, so do let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and every week there are going to be new videos about recorder playing. Except next week because I'm going on holiday.